Let's answer the question, how much money do authors really make? Now, we're not talking about New York Times best-selling authors because those are the authors that get big advance royalty checks. We're talking about self-published independent authors, specifically authors that use print-on-demand companies like Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing, IngramSpark, and Draft Digital, and so on. Print on demand, or POD, means that books are only printed as they're ordered. So we're not doing a big print runs where you have 10,000 copies of a book that you have to sell before you then make any additional royalty. We are talking about just selling 1, 2, 3, 4, however many books sell in a day. They get printed that day, they get shipped to the customers, and then the next day it happens all over again. If you're looking to self-publish a book, it is essential that you understand how royalties work with print-on-demand companies so you can really understand how much money you can expect to make. Because that book that you're selling for $9.99, you don't actually get $9.99. Only a small fraction of that money will actually end up in your pocket. So if you're wondering how that ends up breaking down, make sure to stay tuned for this entire video. Hello everyone, my name is Mandi Lynn. I'm an author, book cover designer, and the creator of the Book Launch Planner series, and I make weekly videos on the business of being an author. So if that sounds good to you, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a new upload. So as I talk about how the royalties work for different print-on-demand companies, I'm going to be talking specifically about 3 print-on-demand companies because they're the most popular. We have KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing, IngramSpark, and then also Draft Digital when it comes to the ebook side of things. So speaking of which, it breaks down into 2 different categories, whether you sell ebooks or whether you sell print books, because royalties work slightly different for each one. Let's start with ebooks because it's a little simpler. So to explain everything, I'd figure I'd just give you guys actual examples of how my royalties work so it can help you wrap your mind around it. So for ebooks, I price one of my ebooks at $4.99. Of that, I only make $3.37, which is actually a pretty good royalty rate. But why is it I make that much? Let's talk about it. Royalties is the amount of money you make per book sale. The platform I sell the ebook through also has to make money. And in this case, I publish my ebooks through Kindle Direct Publishing because I like to do the Kindle Unlimited Kindle Select program. So Amazon has to get their cut for the book as well. So if you publish your ebook through Kindle Direct Publishing, you're able to choose 2 different royalty rates. You can choose 35% royalty rate or 70% royalty rate. Obviously, when you do the math, the 70% royalty rate is much better. That's what I chose for my books. And then the other 30% goes to Amazon because, again, they own Kindle Direct Publishing. Now, why would someone choose 35%? The 35% option is there because if you price your book at less than $2.99, you have to do the 35% royalty rate option. Now, why is it we don't just make the whole cut of the money? Like if we price our book for $4.99, why aren't we just making $4.99? Well, because everyone needs to get their own cut. Because we're publishing our book through KDP, they have to get their own cut. They're a business. It's how things work. Now, what about IngramSpark? IngramSpark is a different print-on-demand company. They also offer ebook distribution. What if we publish through them? Well, I've never personally published my ebooks through IngramSpark. I've heard terrible things about their ebook publishing, that the distribution just isn't worth it in terms of royalty rates. And IngramSpark is more so known for their print quality and distribution versus their ebook distribution. So I really don't recommend working with them for ebooks. I also don't really recommend working with them for print books either, but that's my personal opinion. I actually have an entire playlist on why I don't like IngramSpark and all the different issues I've had with them. So if you do plan on working with IngramSpark, make sure to do your thorough research. Check out my playlist so if you do work with them, you can avoid all the issues that I had. But with that said, what if you want to publish your ebook somewhere besides just Amazon? Because if you work with KDP, you only publish your ebook on Amazon. What if you want to publish it everywhere else? That's where Draft Digital comes in. And they make their royalty rate breakdown extremely clear. So whatever you price your book at, Draft Digital takes 10%. Now, the only fuzzy part here is that they don't just take 10%, because Draft Digital is just a platform that allows you to be on other platforms. So if you're on Draft Digital, then your ebook can be in libraries, and your ebook can be on Nook, and your ebook can be on the iTunes store. I'm not sure if that's what it's still called anymore, actually. Draft Digital allows you to put your ebook on multiple different platforms. So Draft Digital takes their cut, but then if you use Draft Digital to publish your book on Nook, which is owned by Barnes & Noble, then Barnes & Noble also takes their cut as well, and those rates of percentage of what cuts they take varies. But Draft Digital does say on their website that stores vary in terms of their rate that they take, but it's usually around 30%. So that means if you publish your ebook through Draft Digital, you can expect about 60% royalty rate, because Draft Digital is taking 10%, and whatever store you're putting your ebook on is taking another 30%. Now, you can avoid the 10% that Draft Digital takes if you personally upload your ebook to every individual store that you want your ebook listed on. That is a way you can make slightly more of a royalty rate, so you're only losing 30% of your book's price, and you can get a 70% royalty rate like you do on Amazon. So if you want to publish your book to Nook, then you'd go directly to Barnes & Noble and upload your book directly to Barnes & Noble. But again, if you don't want to do all the individual uploading to all the individual stores, you can just upload it to one place, Draft Digital, and they do all the hard work for you of putting it on multiple different platforms. But again, then you lose another 10% of your royalty rate in your book. So that's ebooks. Let's talk about print books. Now, print books have an additional cost that ebooks don't, because they are books that are getting printed, and printing books is not free. So we need to take into account the print cost of each book before we get any royalty rates from them. So for this example, let's talk about Kindle Direct Publishing again. If I have a book that I list for $11.99, I only make $3.34. That is because on Kindle Direct Publishing, the royalty rate is 60%, and the print cost for this specific book is $8.86. So after the print cost and after KDP takes their cut, I only make $3.34, which is actually pretty similar to what I make for my ebooks as well. So it's like kind of nice that no matter what people buy, I still make similar, but of course it would be nice if we made a little more with print books. And in this example, I'm talking specifically about paperbacks. Please note that the printing cost for hardcovers is even more expensive, but the royalty rate is the same. But oftentimes, if you want to make as much as you do with your hardcovers as you do with your paperbacks, you're going to have to increase the list price in order to make up for that increased printing cost, because the printing cost of a print-on-demand hardcover book is pretty expensive. So what exactly determines the printing cost? There's only a few things. It's whether it's a hardcover or a paperback, because like I just said, a hardcover is much more expensive to print, and how many pages it has. Obviously, a book that's 200 pages is going to be cheaper than a book that is 400 pages. And lastly, whether the interior of the book is color or black and white. Most books are in black and white. It's your standard chapter book. But some books, if it's a photography book or a children's book, the interior will be color and therefore much more expensive to print, because colored ink is just more expensive. So if you're trying to cut down on the print cost of your book, those are some of the things you want to look into. Now let's talk about the royalty rates for IngramSpark's print books, because it's slightly more complicated. IngramSpark actually lets you choose your wholesale discount. They don't let you choose like your royalty rate, they let you choose the wholesale discount. Then they take the printing cost into effect and tell you what you'll make after all of that. So they let you choose a wholesale discount between 35 and 55%. This is the discount you are giving to retailers to buy your book. So you actually want to give them a smaller discount if you want to make a higher royalty rate. So obviously you're like, oh, well, I'm only going to give them a 35% discount then so I can make as much money as possible. Well, if you go on the IngramSpark website, they actually recommend that you do the 55% discount rate because retailers are more likely to buy your book if you give a higher discount because they don't want to invest too much. And then you can also choose whether or not retailers are allowed to return your book if it doesn't sell. So if a bookstore buys your book, puts it on the shelf, it's there for 3 months and doesn't sell, they can then return it and get a refund, and then you end up with the book back in your possession, and now you're responsible with either just keeping it, selling it, or doing whatever you'd like. All of this is seeming a little bit confusing. I go into way more detail about this on my IngramSpark uploading video, where I give a full tutorial on how to upload and publish your book to IngramSpark and some tips to avoid confusion and mistakes that I've made, because again, IngramSpark, not user-friendly, not beginner-friendly, wouldn't recommend it, but most people go to it because it is the only print-on-demand company at this time that I'm aware of that you can go to if you want to see your print book in bookstores. That does not mean your book is going to automatically end up in bookstores, but it does mean if you had a reader walk into your local Barnes & Noble and ask, hey, I want to order this book by Mandi Lynn, then they can look it up. They can order it and then sell it through Barnes & Noble directly. I just want you guys to know that just because you publish your book through IngramSpark, it doesn't mean that a month from now you can walk into your local Barnes & Noble or independent bookstore and see your book on the shelf. It just means if you ask them to order the book for you, that they would be able to order the book for you. That's not always the case if you publish exclusively through Amazon KDP, just because the way things are set up for them to be able to order books. So, now that we've discussed it, how much do authors make per book sale? As we can see now, not that much. So if you're a self-published author, oftentimes the key to making a good income as an indie author is to publish multiple books. That way you're not trying to sell 100 copies of the one book each month. Maybe you're trying to sell 1 copy a day of every book you've ever published. So if you have a big roster of books, say you've published 10 books, then you sell 10 copies a day of the 10 individual books over the course of 30 days. Now you've sold 300 books in 1 month. Even though each individual book doesn't have a ton of sales, you still make a pretty good chunk of change because you have a lot of books in your backlog. If you're a debut author, this is going to be super frustrating to hear, but you're not going to sell a ton of books unless, you work super, super hard with your marketing. But the more books you publish, the more money you make, especially if you publish a series where if people buy 1 book, then they want to read through the entire series. There's definitely a totally different strategy when it comes to self-publishing a book versus traditionally publishing a book, whereas you pour a lot more into a traditional published book, but that's because there's multiple people backing you financially and a lot more going on financially, whereas self-published books, you kind of just publishing as quickly and as fast as possible while also keeping the quality there. But that's a totally different discussion. Anyways, I hope this video helped explain how much authors really make per book sale and can give you a better idea of what you can expect when you're self-publishing your book. If you have any requests for future videos, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I will see you all in the next video.